Well, hello there, everyone. Welcome back to another Canada Immigration Live Q&A sponsored by the Canadian Immigration Institute and Holthe Immigration Law, which is our immigration law firm stretched across this fine country. Alicia, this is the Thursday version, which I have not been on for a while. It's great to be on here with you. How you doing?
I'm well. It's great to have you back. I'm super thankful that Cedric was able to manage kind of a put together version in your absence, but it worked. We tried to get on there anyways and answer people's questions, but it is nice to have the platform back and be able to have a little bit more of a glossy feed where we can see those questions come in.
Yes. Well, yeah, I was so grateful. Cedric has just been a fantastic addition to the firm, and I was away on vacation with Deanna in Prince Edward Island, and then we took a little trip up to Jasper and Banff up there, and there's not a lot of internet reliability. So I was grateful that you guys were able to keep the show moving forward, answering questions, and yes, we're back at it. And let's just see who's tuning in here, Alicia. We'll just
Mhm.
pop that off and let's see. So we've got, um, you can pronounce his name, Alicia.
I'm gonna go with
Dikarula.
Abu Bakar. Yeah.
Yes, Abu Bakar. Dikarula. Hello, bro, to you too. And Divine, good to see you connecting in here. Good evening to you. Ralph, as always. Ralph, I got the invitation to Jaden's birthday party from your sister, and I'm really looking forward to trying to make it up there in September, up to Edmonton to attend that birthday party of my little godson. So thanks for connecting in, my friend, and I think there's a good chance I'm going to be able to make it. So fingers crossed, fingers crossed. All right, Laura, good to see you. Thanks for connecting in. And Masood is over in Moncton, New Brunswick. We've got, as always, Gunnar Boy, who's connected in. How's your week been, Alicia?
It's been good. We're right in the middle of summer here in Calgary, and it's been dry and hot, and so there's lots of outside watering, and the raspberries are in full production, so that's great. I've been picking raspberries in the evenings after work, so it's good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. When I was up visiting my cousins, which was this past week, they live up near Dawson Creek on the Alberta side of the border in an area called Bonanza. And the Saskatoons were everywhere. Just everywhere you walked, it seemed like there were Saskatoons. So they're definitely all ripe, and the harvest is plentiful up there these days. So we had lots of Saskatoons.
No.
Okay, we got Masood here. Good to see. He says, "Good to see you too, Alicia." Excellent. All right, those who are asking questions, just hold off just a little bit longer, and then we'll jump into that. Comment here from Ruth. She says, "Hey, Mark and Alicia, thank you for the informative videos on the post-grad work permit extension. You were very, very welcome." And I think many of you are probably aware, and if you're not, we'll just give you another little heads up that the course is very alive and well. And we have tons of resources and tools and tips right here in this one, our 18-month postgrad extension course. And that will be open and accessible for you all through the year to the end of 2022. And you will see right here on Monday, August the 15th, will be our second masterclass. Now you have total access to all the questions and answers that came from the August 4th version. But those of you who are now moving forward wondering, maybe I should file and not wait for this special measure work permit because I don't know if it's going to come and I don't want to fall out of status. Those of you, if you do file, immigration will return your processing fee. So if they ultimately grant you through the the special measure and that automatic grant of a work permit, if you had filed before, they will return the fee, and so you won't lose out. But August the 15th on Monday, 6 to 7 p.m. Mountain Time, hoping to be able to do it at a time when all of you guys are home from work. That's 5 Pacific, and that's 8 Eastern Time, 9 Atlantic. That should give a really, really good opportunity for you to come and ask any questions that you want. And I'll be honest, Alicia, going through, just diving in, immersing myself in everything related to this sucker is not easy. Even
Yeah.
generating the document checklist and the place to upload your form and doing it properly, and even answering the form, it's just been really, really challenging. It took me hours to sort it out. I can't imagine
Yeah.
what people are doing.
Well, and I have heard from some people who filed it, they just jumped on and filed it and they weren't eligible to file it. And now they're trying to figure out, well, if I had an ongoing spousal open work permit and then I put this application in, but I wasn't eligible for it and I'm on implied status, if they refuse this, is that going to mess up my implied status on the spousal open
Yes.
work permit because that hasn't even been opened yet? So
Yeah.
it can get extremely complex.
Yeah, it sure can. And if you find you guys yourself in this situation, like obviously in this Q&A, we're not able to dive deep into specific situations. That's legal advice. And all you need to do is slide over to our website, click on speak to a lawyer, and you can have access to any of our fine immigration lawyers within the firm. And I can guarantee that within a day, you're going to find, even sometimes same day, an opportunity to book an appointment if you need assistance. So that's always there. All right. So hopefully I will see many of you in the masterclass coming up on Monday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Okay. We've got Warren here. Great job, Caillou. All right. Not quite sure what that is. Maybe that's, I don't know what Mark Antony has got there. Anyways. Okay. Phil says, watching, we got a new look for the new live. Yes, Phil. There is Phil. Yes, we do, Phil. And because I had a study permit that I've been racing to get filed with a client, and we spent like 2.5 hours going through everything today, and we're not quite done. We're going to resume here at a little after 12 when this live session comes to an end. And then Phil, next week, we are going to roll this out. So Phil's our video editor, and he's really excited, and we are too, because the new interfaces are really cool, and you guys are going to like them. They're starting to really look like the mainstream news media, and Phil's put a lot of time and effort into that. So hang in there, Phil. We will definitely pull all of that up. I just ran out of time before we could go live, so we used our old faithful one right here. Okay, Prakash over on Facebook. Good to have you connecting in. Amy, as always. Hello, Mark and Alicia. Nice to see the classic duo again. You bet. We are back. And let's see what else we have here. Yeah, Ralph says, I hope you can come. Absolutely, Ralph. Samir here is over in London, UK, patiently waiting for my spousal PR to come through. There's a lot of waiting these days.
But
Lots
I
of
have some
people
good
are.
news. I have some good news, Mark. So clients, we filed an outside Canada application. We did it through the new Spousal online portal. Husband was here in Canada as a Canadian PR and wife was over in India. We filed this and it was processed extremely quickly. So she got her passport request within about 4 months. So she is
Wow.
coming. It's approved. I'm super happy for them.
That is awesome. We need that news. Like it's been rough going over the last couple of years here. And often what we're sharing here is we know the processing times are bad. There's not much we can do. Hang in there. That's been the responses that we've given. And so to have spousal processed in right around 4 months is crazy. That is awesome, especially in outside of Canada.
Yeah.
All right. Spider-Man is back. Spidey saying hi from Australia at 3 a.m. Okay. I'll give you some applause because that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Deshesh, hello to you. Good to see you as well. And we'll just keep zipping through here, and then I will get to the questions in a little bit. So just hold off on those ones, you guys. Let's just see here. Let's see who we have next. Okay, we've got Matthew. Hello to Matthew here. And let's see what else we've got here. Boudica. Hey, Mark and Alicia, appreciate your efforts and thank you. He's from Richmond Hill. Thanks for connecting in. And I think we're just about, let's see here. Roy says, got my PR thanks to Chanel reviewing our documents. Appreciate the team. So yes, indeed. And just to kind of reiterate to everybody that there are 4 of us. So when you connect in, you've got Alicia and Chanel here and Cedric and myself, and we each bring a little bit different to the table. And so I absolutely love when I can give shout outs to the other lawyers in the firm. And that's just fantastic. Thank you so much, Roy, for sharing that with us. And that's what we love to do. Absolutely. Thesura, Canadian Immigration Institute alumnus, says, hello, Mark and Alicia. Hope you guys are doing good, doing fantastic. Okay. All right. So let's jump into it now. So as of the Sir's comment here, and remember, we've got LinkedIn, we've got Facebook, we've got YouTube. And so we will try to pull from all over. Try to keep your questions as general as possible so that they will benefit the most people that are watching. And if you do that, you've got a greater chance that your question is going to be answered. So we don't answer all of them. There's not time. And if you have a question that as I'm scrolling through here, that we feel that is going to benefit a lot of people, then those are the questions that we're going to pull up. Okay. Okay, let's see here. We'll pull up Harpreet's comment here. Harpreet says, "Hey, Mark and Alicia, super informative videos on work permit extension. I received the interim work authorization email yesterday. Many have. I have a TRV. Can I travel and come back with interim work permit letter and start working?" Okay, thank you. So this is one right now, and I'm serious about this, Harpreet. I'm going to ring this. Maybe is my answer. Maybe there might be a chance, but it's not something that we're going to tell you to just go and do without actually talking to you. I had discussions in my technical briefing with immigration last week, and there was some possible wiggle room, but who you're facing when you come back is the Canada Border Service Agency. And if those characters decide they're not going to grant you entry, then you're hooped out of a
Yeah.
plane ticket, pack your bags, head back, and then you've got a denied entry on your hands. So Harpreet, I recommend that you slide over, book a consult, and there's a link below in the description where you can do that. And let's talk about that, because the answer is maybe. And once we get more information, any thoughts on that, Alicia, other than craziness, danger, maybe scary?
You and I have different risk tolerances. I would
Yeah, we
say,
do.
oh my gosh, don't do it because the risk is too great, right? If you get denied at the border and you are not allowed back in, then what are your other alternatives? What's your long-term plan? Have you filed a PR application? Are you in the express entry pool? Because that, if you're relying on your Canadian work experience and you're not allowed to keep gathering that Canadian work experience if you're denied entry, you lose your interim work authorization and that might set you back hugely. So I'd say be super careful, but for sure book a consult so we can go
Yeah.
through the ins and outs of what's happening.
Yeah. And so, Alicia, what is the default? So if someone isn't reckless and
Yeah.
says, okay, I don't want to chance it, then what's the default for
The
Harpreet?
yeah, the default is stay in Canada. You've got your interim work authorization. Continue to work to continue to get your Canadian work experience if you're eligible for that. And, hopefully you actually get that work permit in the mail. Once you have that, then you can travel.
Right. And it looks to me like Harpreet might be outside of Canada right now. So if
Mm,
Harpreet is outside of Canada and she gets this letter, which everybody does, whether you're inside or out, if they don't know for certain and they don't distinguish, they don't have time or the capacity to determine who is in and who is out. So if you're outside of Canada and, the question of, you've got a valid TRV, can I just come back and then start working on the force of that email? Like I said,
yeah,
maybe is my answer. But if someone says, whoa, I don't want to chance it with the Cowboys on the border, what is the alternative? You can still apply, right? You,
correct.
you still
Yeah.
have the ability to apply from outside of Canada. And that's one thing that's really cool about this announcement. And at this stage, I'm working right now on that component to the course. If you're outside of Canada, how do you apply? But right now, Harpreet, same thing. I recommend that you book a consult.
Yeah, and Mark, you're absolutely right. This makes a huge difference whether Harpreet's in Canada or outside Canada. So I was reading it that she was inside Canada and wanted to travel out, but she might very well be outside Canada and wanting to travel in. So
Mhm. Okay, Kamaljeet says, "Hello, sir. I have a question. I'm on a postgrad work permit and my husband has a spousal open work permit. Can I apply for my spouse as well to file the postgrad work permit extension public policy?" And yeah,
yeah,
what's your
so
thoughts on that,
this
Alicia?
was yeah, this was one of the things that you guys did talk about in your technical briefing. And so it depends on who's filed when and which category you're under. So you're on the spousal, husband has a spousal open work permit, a spouse as well to the file. Yeah, so if you're doing that post-grad work permit extension, but the spouse is on the open.
Yeah, on an accompanying spousal.
Yeah. So they've said two things. They've said that if you're doing one together at the same time, then you can add the spouse to it. But if you've got to have the spouse catch up, if it's not an application that's being filed at the same time together with a dependent, then you'll have to have the spouse prove that you were eligible for it and that you've applied for it. So
Yes. It
I guess it'll
becomes,
just,
yeah, it becomes super complicated, Kamaljit, because there's a number of different variations to this. And obviously, in the same way that they were able to obtain the spousal open on your postgrad, you need to continue to prove you're working in a skilled,
yeah,
skill level B, A, or O. But there's a lot of little nuances to this, because when they make this edict that anyone whose work permit is expired will get work authorization, there was indication that those who would be eligible for round 1 and round 2 may not get that letter that says you were authorized to work until, when was it, May of next year, 2023 or something. And
yeah,
so those are the levels that we need to understand, Kamaljit, where you sit. If you're on a current postgrad work permit, when does it expire?
yeah,
I'm assuming that if you're talking about this program, it's going to be expiring before December 31st of this year, because that's the only ones that are eligible. But yeah, we highly recommend you book a consult with one of us, and then we can try to sort this out for you. But the short answer is there will be a way. It's just you have to do it correctly. Otherwise, your spouse, we've gotten this tremendous amnesty for those who maybe have fallen out of status. But if your spouse falls out of status, that, as far as I can tell, doesn't apply to cover or cure any unauthorized work for accompanying dependents. So you got to be
right.
really, really careful with that. Okay. Monsoon says, got my PR today. I won't even read anything more before the applause. Thank you, Mark. I owe it to you, man. How did I get my sister here? How do I get my sister here? She's not an orphan and does not fall into any other categories for sponsorship. She is disabled, though. Any thoughts on that, Alicia? That's another one of these ones. But generally
Yeah.
speaking, do you have any general tidbits you can share?
Yeah, so generally speaking, it is very difficult to try to bring a disabled relative because there are medical inadmissibility sections of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act. And so if the disability, and it really does depend on how disabled, what kind of disability, and what is the cost of social services and medical care on average over a 1 year or maybe a 3 year time horizon. And so if that's going to be over the average Canadian healthcare costs of about 8,000, I just looked it up recently, per year, then that person, then your sister, may be medically inadmissible and not eligible to come to Canada. So it is really difficult. Occasionally there are ways. It does really depend on your facts situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see who is next on our list here. Just bear with me a second. Okay. All right. EJ is watching from Saudi Arabia. Welcome, EJ. Okay, Masood says, I got my medical request after 30 months of processing. Yep, long time. For my paper-based PR application, I'm inland and just submitted the medical request. How long does it usually take after that?
Hopefully not too much longer.
Yeah.
Um, it looks like it's probably one of the express entry older applications that we're sitting in process.
Yeah.
My clients who did the spousal, they had the medical request in June. They got that in right away in July, and they got their approval letter in August, beginning of August. So we're hoping that it's going to start moving once you've got that in.
Yeah. We're starting to see a little bit more traction, Masood, so I would hope that it wouldn't be taking too much longer. Now, there are other people that have been sitting for a long, long period of time, and they've received no confirmation, no advancement, no additional document request, no medical request. And if you're in that situation, I want to slide over to a blog post that Cedric wrote on an application that is called a writ of mandamus or mandamus, whatever you want to call it. But essentially, this is for situations when your application has been stuck and there's been no forward movement, And immigration has basically forgotten about you, or at least you feel that way, where it's blown past the the traditional processing times, even the updated processing times that they have on their website. And there are some certain factors that we can look at, but this is something that we can do now to assist people with applications that have been stalled out. Sometimes a little demand letter can jog things loose, but sometimes we have to revert to that. So if that's your situation, you're stuck, nothing's happening on your application, no matter what it is, whatever kind of immigration application. Cedric in our office, he wrote this blog post, as you can see here, and I recommend you slide over, and it's easy to find it. Just go to our resources blog, and these suckers are being turned out very, very frequently, and they're just a wonderful resource that is available for everyone. And when you go to our blog, you can see there is, we have, the 18-month policy answers to your questions. These are some of the most common questions that people had that there just weren't answers to when I attended that technical briefing. We flipped that around, and I'm not sure if we included in here that slide deck from IRCC. Yes, I can't remember exactly. But anyways, this is once again my awesome staff that are putting this together. Before I had to do all of this, Alicia, and now I've got fantastic people who are helping with this. Igor and Phil, our video editor, and and Prem helps out with these, and Cedric now and Chanel. It's awesome with this team that I have. So you can see we've got a blog post on provincial nominations in BC from Chanel. You guys definitely want to check that out. And I'm going to have Chanel join me, and we're going to do a video on that. And, the updates for the candidates with Canadian Studies. While I was away, Alicia and Cedric did a nice video segment on this, helping people to understand what they need to do to make sure that their profiles didn't expire and lose their tenure within that tiebreaker. And so, yeah, there's lots. So go check this out. There's a ton of different blog posts on just about, well, it's growing. It's an ever-growing list, and phenomenal things that we're just providing for free to help you guys. Okay, Samir says, hey, Mark, what are the next steps once I've completed my medical and my spousal PR application? How long does it take until the next steps send? What are the next steps? What are the next steps, essentially? Many thanks. And I think we maybe talked about that briefly, but
Yeah, so in general, and this is the kind of overview that I often give to clients, a spousal sponsorship is a two-stage application. So the first thing that they're going to do when they get that spousal sponsorship application package is they're going to look at what is the eligibility of this Canadian sponsor. And then after they do that, then they're going to look at the admissibility of the person being sponsored, the principal applicant. And so as part of that process, that's when they're going to be asking for the medical exam. That's when they're going to be asking for biometrics if you haven't already done biometrics. And they're going to be looking through your place certificates and doing their background security checks. So depending on where you are in the process, depending on how up to date your place certificates and clearances are, they may be doing some background, and sometimes that's where things get stalled out. But if you've done the medical and you've done the biometrics, then as long as you're keeping them up to date, if you change addresses or if there's a material change in your application, there's not much else that you can do because they're back-end processing.
perfect. All right, I'm going to just jump back to, this is an interesting situation. This is Aaliyah. And so Aaliyah asks Alicia, kindly clarify this. If my PR application has a non-accompanying spouse, but an accompanying minor, is that a red flag for immigration officer? So please say it's not good to have, people say it's not good to have a non-accompanying spouse. So I'm assuming maybe this is express entry. Maybe we'll go with that.
Probably. Yeah. So assuming it is express entry, then you can take a look at the grid, right? And people do this all the time, and they say, well, wait a minute, if I do a CRS calculation with just myself as the applicant with a non-accompanying spouse, then I actually get higher points, right? Because maybe my spouse hasn't done their education credential assessment, or maybe they don't have university, or they don't have a master's degree, and maybe their English or their French isn't super high. And so sometimes what people do is they just decide to apply for express entry or put their application into the pool, and they list their spouse as unaccompanying so that hopefully their points are a little bit higher. But in the situation where you have people who are working overseas, maybe they've brought a child with them to Canada and they're working here with one of the kids. Um, there's a number of reasons why somebody might choose to not have their spouse accompanying, but the reason that it does cause potential problems and delay is that it has to be clear to the immigration officers that the child, as long as this is the kid, biological child from both of you, that the other non-accompanying parent has consented to have this child be part of the permanent residence application. And this goes to international law against child abduction. So it needs to be really clear that the parent who's overseas is authorizing the child to become a permanent resident as part of that application for the parent who's in Canada.
Right. Okay. And yeah, we run into these all the time. And it's, yeah, people are doing whatever they can to give themselves a shot at PR. And when I was just thinking about it as I was away from my wife, even this past few days, as I went with my son up north, and to be separated from a spouse, which, wow, like, sure, if it's 4 month processing for an outside of Canada, that changes things a little bit. But in the days, like if we were to look at processing from outside of Canada right now, I'm actually quite curious to see where we sit with this. Let's slide over and just take a peek. So
Mhm.
someone was to go through the PR process and then land. Obviously PRs can't sponsor their spouses from outside of Canada, so they have to be here. So if we put here spouse living outside Canada, and then we get processing times, it's like still listed as 2 years, even though you got that miracle 4 months, Alicia. So
Mhm.
yeah, so people have to take that into consideration. It's obviously it's super volatile and just unpredictable. So all right, let's get to the next one. Okay, so Hisham says, "Hey, Mark and Alicia, could you guys please illustrate to me the ARIMA procedures?" Well, Hisham, Alicia and I do not practice Quebec-based immigration, which is what you're referring to. And so we typically refer our clients to our colleagues out in Quebec. And there may be a time when we add a lawyer from Quebec to our team. But at this stage, anything Quebec based, which is what you're asking, we traditionally, we don't, we don't delve into those things. We refer those to our colleagues in Quebec. Okay, Laura says, "I've renewed my passport and want to travel outside Canada. My current work permit document has the number of the old passport. Do I have to update my work permit with the new passport number before I travel? My work permit and TRV are valid until December of 2022.
So this is an interesting question, and sometimes it depends on the practices in your country with respect to what they do with those old passports and whether you actually have a new passport that's been granted to you that doesn't cancel the old one. Often they put a little hole through it or they cut off the corner of it. And sometimes the TRV is going to be in the old passport, but you're entering under the new passport. Now, one of the things that you might consider is, if you don't have an extension application in or a change of conditions application in, it's possible that the closer you get to December, a CBSA officer is going to question you more thoroughly about what your plans are and how long you intend to stay in Canada and whether you have valid temporary intent. But sometimes what people would do is they bring the old canceled passport with the visa in it, and then they bring their new passport to show that they have extended their status, and then they enter under the new passport with showing the old TRV. But generally, you're going to want to apply for a new TRV once you hopefully have a renewed ability to work if you are eligible to work.
All right. Okay, next question. This one is Berdvinder. He says, "Hey, I applied for a study permit, but it was rejected on May 16th, and I had a refusal from the UK in 2009. But later, I got a UK visa and I visited the UK, but I didn't mention about my visa to the Canadian embassy. So I don't know if this was the nature of the rejection, Alicia, but maybe you can just remind everybody once again about the harm that can be caused by not properly disclosing and how horrible immigration is and ruthless and unforgiving."
hmm There's there have been a number of federal court cases where the finding of misrepresentation, so a 5-year bar, has been upheld because people fail to read that question or fail to disclose old visitor visa rejections from other countries. So when you look at those statutory declaration questions, read it very, very carefully. It really does say, have you ever been refused an immigrant visa to Canada or any other country ever? Right? It doesn't even say when the timeline is ever. And so you have an obligation to truthfully disclose every single visa refusal you have ever received in your life, and then explain, well, in your case, explain, okay, I got the UK visa later. But if you fail to disclose that refusal to the UK back in 2009, you run the risk of immigration saying you misrepresented if you didn't disclose it. And you really do not want to have a misrepresentation finding against you because you're inadmissible to Canada for 5 years. And be really careful. I don't know why you were refused that study permit. um, May is a while ago, so keep in mind, if you want to judicially review that refusal, then you only have 15 days if it was an in Canada application, 60 days if it was an outside Canada application. In some very specific circumstance, you can try to do a judicial review application outside of the normal filing deadlines, but you have to have a very good reason why. So please don't sit on these. If you get refused, please talk to a lawyer right away. You cannot talk to a consultant about judicial review. They are not authorized to provide services for judicial review. Only Canadian lawyers can do that. So do talk to somebody right away if you get a refusal.
Next question's from Lima. Hello, Mark. I have a question. When the express entry profile expires and we apply for a new one, will we continue to be considered as an old client, or we will be put back in the back as a new client? Thanks. So when
Yeah,
profiles expire, Alicia, what happens to them?
they're gone. You gotta restart. You gotta start all over again.
Yeah,
And this goes to the tie breaking rule, right? So it
yeah,
depends on how long that profile has been in the queue. So yeah, you're out of luck. You start
yeah.
again when
You're
the clock
back at
resets.
square one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this Facebook user who is tuning in on the Express Entry Law private Facebook group says, "Hello, sir. I'm a PNP Express Entry applicant, and those of you who are on the Express Entry Law private Facebook group, Cedric has taken over that. So you'll probably see Cedric popping in and out on that page, answering questions and doing little videos and things. So the Express Entry Law, stay tuned if you haven't seen Cedric, because he will be making appearances there. So, so I'm a PNP, excuse me, Express Entry applicant. Recently, I received an ADR about updating proof of funds along with others, but London Visa doesn't specify about the time period of the bank statement. Please share your thoughts about time period of my bank statement. Is it okay if I share a bank statement for 1 week or 1 month? Thank you." So what do you think, Alicia?
Aha.
So how old, let's start with how old they can be and still be effective. And what time period do you typically want to share in terms of, what immigration is looking for this updated proof of funds?
hmm And this has been a little bit of a bee in our bonnets recently because we're working on some tools for people who have bought our Express Entry course
Mm-hmm.
materials and existing clients under Express Entry, because people get confused about proof of funds. And the proof of funds requirement is different if you have been nominated under Canadian Experience Class. The good news is you don't have to prove proof of funds. If you've been nominated under CEC, you don't have to prove proof of funds. But you're going to say, well, Facebook user is going to say, I've been nominated under PNP, right? And so it's not as clear if you're nominated under PNP how you or whether you have to prove proof of funds and then how you prove proof of funds. So if you've been nominated under the PNP and immigration is asking for an additional document request, then presumably you haven't met the requirements for CEC, and now they're looking at assessing you under federal skilled worker or federal skilled trades. So under the federal skilled worker category, you have a general requirement that you have to prove those funds. And immigration is going to look at the date that you submitted your application, and they're going to look at a 6-month period. So you're going to want to prove that from whenever you submitted your application, going back 6 months, you had those funds. And then if it's been a long time that you've been in process now and they're asking for updated proof of funds, you're going to want to show those proof of funds now and then hopefully for the last 6 months as well, and prove that you haven't fallen under that minimum settlement fund requirement depending on your family size.
All right, let's go here. Next question. This one is from Muhammad. He says, I'm studying in Canada at the moment. I started in May 2022. Will I be eligible for a postgrad work permit if more than 50% of my studies were online? I saw a policy that allowed to approve postgrad work permits for online studies recently.
So Mark, maybe you can jump over. So this is the article that Cedric and I just wrote. Oh gosh, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, time is blurring. It's on our blog site, and it's the one that talks about important news for express entry candidates with Canadian studies between March 2020 to August 2022. There we go. And so this is where the normal requirement is that in order to get points for Canadian studies, those studies have to be in-person studies. It can't be more than 50% as a distance learning or online. It also has to be from inside Canada and it has to be full-time. Those rules have only been eased, and so they actually did a change to the ministerial instructions for certain periods of study. And so the timeline will be that it's only between studies that occurred March 2020 up until the end of this month, August 2022. And then, sorry, Mark, can you skip back to the question
Yep.
because I don't
Yeah,
remember the
yeah,
date of
absolutely.
the
Yep. Yeah. It's so started in May
started in May.
2022.
Okay, so if you started in May 2022, you are still going to have to meet that requirement because this policy only goes up until August 2022. So depending on the length of your program of studies, depending on whether, so in order to get a postgrad work permit, it has to be a minimum of 8 months. You might be doing a 1-year program, you might be doing a 2-year program, or a 3-year program, or a 4-year program. You are able from May 2022 until August 2022 not to have to meet the requirement of in-person studies, and you can also do it part-time, and you can also do it from even outside Canada. But as of the end of this month, those exceptions don't apply anymore, and you do have to meet all the requirements for more than 50% of your studies being completed in person full-time from inside Canada.
All right. Next, excuse me. Next question is from Aniela. And this is one that happens more frequently than you would imagine. She says, in April, I requested the extension of my children's study permits. Only one of them was approved and the other is still under evaluation. Should I contact the officers through the web form? Like, how do you deal with this, Alicia? Obviously, Aniela, I'll ring the bell and say slide over and we can probably help you to work through that. But it's
Yeah.
not easy. This is clearly a problem with IRCC. There's no reason your second child should have had their application rejected unless you made some kind of a mistake, Aniela, on the application form when you were submitting it. But Alicia,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
So I do find that this is really school board dependent as well. So keep in mind that under Section 30 Sub 2 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, if your children are physically inside Canada with you, and if you, the parent, has an actual work permit or a study permit and you are authorized to remain in Canada, so it can't just be a visitor visa, but if the kids are accompanying a parent with a valid work permit or study permit, then the kids are authorized to study without a study permit as a minor child at the primary or secondary level, so up until anything after high school. Um, you're allowed to study without a study permit as a minor child inside Canada under Section 30 Sub 2, but some of the school boards won't necessarily accept that unless they see a letter or something to that effect. So you can pull that information from immigration's website. You can maybe get an opinion letter from an immigration lawyer if you had to. But some of them want to see that study permit. And so trying to prove to the school boards that you did apply and take a screenshot of when you submitted that application and show that it's still in process.
Adriana, she says, I want the Alicia brain data downloaded to my brain through a Dropbox, please. I do too. I actually do too as well, Adriana. Okay, next question. This is from SR. This is one I'm not sure if I have an answer for, Alicia. Hi, good day. Since our SIN number expired when our postgrad work permits did, do we have to wait until we get a SIN extension approved that we will then be able to work? Thanks.
Yeah. And Cedric and I had a similar question last week, and it's tough because in Canada, the SIN is your social insurance number, and that is what is issued by Service Canada, or ESDC is another name for that government organization that is separate from IRCC. What gives you the authorization to work in Canada as a foreign national is actually the work permit itself, or the ability to work, because we have this crazy world right now where they're sending emails that give you the ability to work. That is the work authorization. But ESDC, Service Canada, doesn't know that until you can prove to them that they're authorized to update your social insurance number. And employers really want to make sure that they're not breaking the law because they have a heightened obligation to not only check your work permits and ensure you have valid authorization to work, but the Act actually deems them to know better if they have not done their due diligence. It deems them to know that people can't work without a work permit. So if you don't have that social insurance number, you don't have an actual work permit in your hand, it's difficult to convince employers to be able to hire you. So this is a practical issue, and we'll have to see what happens in terms of how quickly does Service Canada issue those social insurance numbers when people have these crazy interim work authorization emails.
All right, next question is from SR, and this relates to the new 18-month postgrad extension. So on the form, the 5710, Alicia, SR asks, if we select applying for a work permit with the same employer, would that place any limits on who we can work with in the future? My expired postgrad allowed me to work anywhere.
And this is one of those things, Mark, I wish we could get immigration to update their forms because there is no good answer. When you look at the 5710, there is no good answer for people who are transitioning from postgrad work permits or even IEC work permits to another work permit category, or even an open spousal work permit. Because if you're moving from an open work permit to any sort of change of conditions, your only options on the IMM 5710 is applying for a work permit with the same employer or applying for a work permit with a new employer or restoration, which doesn't apply, or a temporary residence permit, which doesn't apply. So it's very confusing as to which application category to pick. For sure, it's either applying for a work permit with the same employer or applying for a work permit with a new employer. And I'm curious, Mark, if you have a preference in your course on what you said to do.
Yeah, no, the reality is when it comes, like if you're currently working for the same employer, I always put applying for the same employer, even
Yeah,
though it's an open one. If you're not
yeah,
currently working at all, then I instruct people to say I'm applying for a new one. But I have not seen, Alicia, any practical difference when it comes
no,
to applying for a truly open work permit. So it's
yeah.
going to come open, just like they've indicated, just like your post grad. It's going to be in the same fashion. You can work anywhere across Canada for any employer in any occupation, and it's really truly open. And in the course, I also teach people in the 5710 form how to complete all the rest of it. Because what IRCC instructs you to do, there's only 2 or 3 little boxes where they tell you there's a very specific thing they want you to put in there, a specific code. And, within the job title and duties and responsibilities, those sections, they have specific wording that they want you to put in the form. If you don't, and if you don't do it correctly, then there's a distinct possibility that they will not interpret this, an officer, as being one of these post-grad 18-month extensions, and we'll just think it's some other open work permit that you're trying to apply for, but you don't qualify for anything because you're either out of status or whatever it might be. So you have to be really, really careful. And there's so many landmines. I thought that the last year's version of this, Alicia, was complex for people. This one is like off the charts. And the sad thing is most people just don't appreciate it. They don't. They just think it's easy. And I know for a fact that we are going to be getting a ton of consultations in the spring of 2023, with people getting applications rejected and then realizing, I don't care if your work authorization is still technically valid till May because of that email. The deadline for doing this right is December 31st, 2022. So, and then we're going to be singing a lot of happy trails to people, which basically we won't be able to help them. And that's why we've spent so much time. I literally dropped everything last week to do the videos, to share what I learned from the technical briefings, and to create the course. So if you have an opportunity, you have not yet filed, I would strongly encourage you to slide over here and take the course. It's $197 US. Like, you guys could drink coffee for a month and have enough to cover the course. And it covers everything. And there's tools, there's templates, there's worksheets, there's things that are there that are specifically designed to help you answer some of the questions that IRCC also wants, because many people may overlook the fact that you have to upload a separate letter to also trigger IRCC to know that you're applying through the program. And if you don't, you run the risk of getting it rejected. And with processing times of being 4 months or potentially even longer, December 31st is going to come before you get your rejection back. And then you guys are going to be screwed. And, there's only so many ways to try to warn people, Alicia, but I'll be honest. I'm actually very surprised that not as many people as I anticipated subscribe to the course.
Yeah. And SR, it's really important to know that they are using the old process, and it's kind of like a round hole with a square peg. They're trying to use that old clunky IMM 5710 plus a whole bunch of workarounds on the questionnaire plus letters of explanation to be able to get the officer to realize that you do qualify for this open 18-month work permit. And if you don't do it right, they're not going to match up all those moving parts and realize that this is what you're applying for.
All right, this one is really one like this, but we'll pull it up because it has general applicability. So Peter says, I've been refused for a study permit due to insufficient finances and purpose of stay, and I apply for a work permit. How should I explain? What he's saying is, I'm applying for a work permit. How should I explain the previous refusal in the LOE for the work permit?
Mm. So yeah, if it's going to ask you, have you ever been refused a immigrant or any sort of study permit, work permit, or PR application to Canada or any other country? And so you're going to say, of course, yes, I have been refused a study permit in the past. And you're going to explain why you were refused that study permit in the past. Now, the big thing is, what kind of work permit are you applying for now? Can you show that you have temporary intent? And can you show that you are qualified to do that job? And so if there has been a previous refusal, for sure you have to disclose it. You want to explain it, and you want to prove that you've got your temporary intent. So what was your purpose of stay? Like, why are you going from a study permit to a work permit now? What's your long-term goal? How do you show that you've got ties back to your home country? Those are all things that officers are going to be wondering about.
All right, next question. This one is, let's flip down here. This is from Tahir. Okay, so this one, I'm not sure how much we can help you with here, but I know you're earnestly seeking a response. So he's got his Red Seal exam scheduled on November the 2nd. Which visa I have to apply? Please guide or talk to me.
So to here, if you're doing red seals, so the red seals would be for something that would be a regulated trade in Canada. And so depending on what kind of trade you're doing, yeah, that's going to depend upon what kind of work permit you're going to be applying for. So generally, you're going to need to find an employer who wants to hire you under that trade program. Most of the time, the general rule is that employers have to have a labor market impact assessment to be able to offer you the job. So you're going to be wanting to look for employers who have an LMIA that's been approved for you to work in this occupation. It's a regulated occupation, so it's under the trade categories. And each province has different obligations in terms of what you have to do to be able to meet their provincial regulation or regulator authority for regulated trades. So make sure that you're talking to the provinces so that you figure out what their provincial requirements are, because they do differ province to province.
All right, this is a great question from Pranav, and it kind of harkens back to one we had in the very beginning. Pranav says, "Hey, Mark and Alicia, does the postgrad work permit masterclass teach us about filling out the 1295, applying for extension outside Canada as well? Thank you." So I can answer that one. So Pranav, I'm actually in the process of generating that lesson right now. So I recommend that you subscribe to the course so that you can benefit from the masterclass on Monday. And by Monday, I will have that updated lesson in there for you so that you can submit that application properly. There's a lot of moving parts filing outside of Canada, so it takes just a little bit longer than I had to when I was launching the course. Literally, we launched it within 2 days of the announcement. I'd like to see someone create a course like that. Guess how you do it, guys? You just don't go to bed. And so, yes, so absolutely will form a part of it, Pranav. And any questions you have about the 1295 form in that masterclass, you can seek clarification on those as well. And that will be Monday, this Monday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So that's the 15th, I believe, August. So head on over here and absolutely just subscribe and join me. And the goal with those masterclasses is to answer every single question that people have. So how much do I charge for a 25-minute consultation? Oh, about $300 plus tax. And so for far less than that, you get the whole course, hours of video instruction on how to do all aspects of it. Plus you get an hour with me. All right, let's hit a couple others here. So this one is from Visha. Visha says, "Hello, I'm currently in the express entry pool, FSW CRS 470. Can you advise how do I get my score up, though I have a CLB 9? So she's getting all the skill transferability points. A few consultants suggest to create multiple express entry profiles. And I bet, Visha, that those few consultants also charge you for each of those profiles that you're submitting. I'll bet you any money."
Oh no.
I'll
All
jump
right.
in, Alicia. I'll jump in on this one and just, I'll qualify something without being, I don't want to be rude because everybody's got their own strategies, right? And technically speaking, if a PNP is targeting someone based on the knock code that they've indicated for their primary knock within the express entry profile, then technically speaking, if you chose different knocks, then it's possible you could get an expression of interest from one province versus another if you've indicated one is your primary knock over another. And, you can go back however long the PNPs feel they want to target. But boy, be very, very careful if you've got a representative that's telling you to file multiple applications and then charge you for each of them if they don't very clearly articulate why and the rationale. Okay.
Yeah. So, and you also run into the risk of misrepresentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have prior applications for study permits or visitor visas or work permits, and you've claimed certain types of work experience and you've described what that work experience was, and if now you're massaging the facts to try to say that, maybe I was an IT consultant or maybe I was a software engineer, but maybe it falls instead of 2173, it's actually 2174, but wait, maybe it's 2171. Immigration's
Yes,
going to get worried about what the truth is, right? And
absolutely.
so you have to be very, very careful about that.
Yeah.
In terms of legitimate ways of increasing your score, learn French, right? Learn French, take a TCF or the TEF exam. How else do you improve your score? Well, hopefully you can find a pathway to come to Canada. Maybe you can get some Canadian education if you are able to get a study permit, if that's in line with what your long-term career objectives are and it makes sense for your trajectory of what you're doing. Other ways would be if you are able to find a Canadian employer who's willing to go through either the International Mobility Program, so the IMP, or the general rule is the LMIA.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And if we go here to Jagdish, he's, in many respects, it's kind of the same thing. He says, what option should a postgrad work permit holder who has a visa that'll expire in July of next year, with only 464 CRS, what options do I have? And I'm just going to ring the bell here, Jagdish, because those same things that Alicia talked about, your employer, will they help you with an LMIA? Is there, are there other pathways within the next few months where if your current employer sucks and they're not supporting you, can you move to another one that's more supportive? And so our time is just about up here, but recommend that you book a consult and then we can actually dive in and see what options are available. All right. I think we are just about done here. Let's see what we have. I'm just going to pull up. Someone decided and yell. So she says, thank you, Mark and Alicia. My kids are age 7 and 9 years old. We applied under my husband's post-grad work permit. I guess we just have to wait. We are also waiting for the decision of the TR to PR pathway. So they got a lot of moving parts, but still, Alicia, I don't see anything there that would, other than what you've already given her in terms of advice, that would, justify it. The MP maybe can help dig through this a little bit, but how long has it been stuck? And really to have one child approved and the other not when they're that young, I'm assuming they're both attending the same school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Anything
Daniela,
else?
pull up the IRCC website on minor children studying in Canada and who's authorized to study without a study permit. And maybe you can show that to the school board because they should be authorized under Section 30 sub 2 of the Act to be able to study as long as they're all in Canada with you and your husband. They shouldn't have an issue. They should be authorized to do so, especially because you have submitted the applications and you're just waiting for processing.
Okay. Barry Miles says, hello, Mark. I renewed my passport last week. I'm in the Express Entry pool. Do I need to add the new passport info on my profile or replace the existing one with the new passport info?
Yeah, so if you're just in the pool,
In the pool.
do,
Yeah.
do you actually have the new passport yet?
I think that's what they'd said.
Renewed it last
Renewed my
week. So
passport
hopefully,
last week.
I know sometimes it gets confusing because people have applied and they maybe get a number, but they don't get the passport issue yet. So they don't have the issue date and the expiry date. So assuming that you actually do have the real passport, you have the number and you have the issue date and the expiry date, then update it in the profile.
Yep.
So
Yep.
put the new
Remove the
passport in
old
there.
one.
Yeah,
Yep. And
it
remove the
gets
old one.
hard it gets hard if people have the number but don't actually have the document and they don't have the issue date and the expiry date.
Yep. All right. Ruth says, my postgrad expired on May the 5th. Applied for a closed work permit before May 5th. So I've not fallen out of status, right?
It depends, Ruth. It depends if you had an underlying basis for the closed work permit. And I hope you did, right? I hope that you had an employer who is supporting you in this application. Maybe they're doing an offer of employment under the employer portal, or maybe your employer went out and did an LMIA for you. But yeah, as long as you submitted an application for a change of conditions, let me see, Ruth has got some more.
Yeah, she says here,
Otherwise,
RCC sent a letter saying I'm authorized to continue working. So she got the maintained the maintained status letter until August the 30th. What date should I mention for when does my status in Canada expire? So
okay. So Ruth,
this is
it's
in the course, Ruth. This is in
yeah.
the course.
Legally, your status expires when your original document expired, unless you have submitted an application to change conditions prior to the expire of the original document, in which case you've got implied status until you get a decision back from IRCC. So the date your status in Canada expires is normally whatever is listed on your document, but you have maintained status as long as you submitted that application properly before the original document expired.
Yeah, exactly. Have to pull this one up. Ghislaine says, I love your team, Mark. I do too, Ghislaine. I do too. Okay, here's one from Lima. My old postgrad work permit, in my old postgrad work permit, my date of birth was written wrong on the postgrad work permit by the border
Oh no.
officer.
Oh no.
How to have it correct in the new one? So, Alicia. So this is the old
Okay.
one, and they didn't deal with it at the time. They should have dealt with it right at that time. So now it's
Yeah.
locked into the system.
So if you guys go to the IRCC website and you look at how to amend or correct a document, there is a specific procedure, and I think Mark is typing away furiously in the background.
No, no, I'm not.
There is a specific procedure to be able to fix an error that IRCC made. This is only going to help people where the error is immigration's error and not your error. But if they did in fact make a mistake when they are issuing your document and you didn't notice and now you did, then yeah, you're going to do this request to amend a valid document to get them to correct the error, and you're going to prove the fact, here's my birthday and you got it wrong. Now, in your case, if you left it and you never corrected it, it's going to be harder to deal with now because you've got to prove that your birthday is in fact your birthday and you never bothered to correct the first document.
Yeah.
So just be careful with that because it's going to be a little bit more work to prove it all to immigration and ask them on the next or the current application to have it properly reflected.
Nikhil, I'm going to do this again. These are absolutely consultations. So did 2 years,